Make sure we're good, and we're live. All right. Wait. No, okay. At first, the video was kind of like lagging a little bit.
Oh.
Just wanted to make sure that was set up. So, while we wait for people to join, I have a question for you.
Yes.
If you could have any book ever written, rewritten by a different author, what book would it be, and by what author?
You want me to answer this like now?
Yeah.
You go first. You've obviously thought about it. I gotta think about it.
Actually, I just saw the question on a subreddit while I was waiting for it to hit.
There are so many.
I know, but like, you've had to have thought about it before.
No.
Trying to think.
I think just for funnies, it would be great to read Lord of the Rings if it was written by C.S. Lewis, and the Chronicles of Narnia if it was written by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh man, that would be great. 1984, but written by Kurt Vonnegut. How could you take such a depressing story and make it funny? I don't know, but Kurt Vonnegut would find
Could do it. He's dark. He's dark enough in his humor that he could do it.
Harry Potter, but rewritten by George R.R. Martin.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Harry.
Hermione's gotta die.
The boy who almost lived.
Ron gets strangled by the Devil's Snare in book 1. Hi, Katie.
Ginny gets eaten by the basilisk.
Yep.
And hello, Katie.
Yep. Victor Crumb gets taken out by the Chinese fireball.
Dumbledore's gets beheaded by the sword of Gryffindor. Snape beheads him with the sword of Gryffindor.
Oh. And then they'd forever call him
the Headless Master.
The Headless Master. And Snape would be the
Crappy boy.
Headmaster Slayer. I don't know. I was trying to get a Jaime Lannister vibe going, and I couldn't do it.
No, so while we're waiting, I had asked the question, if you could have any book ever written, rewritten by a different author, what book would it be, and by what author?
What if
So, for instance, Harry Potter being written by George R.R. Martin instead of J.K. Rowling?
What if Harry Potter was written by Douglas Adams?
It would be like a Lockhart scene, the entire book.
It would be great. The Lockhart scene. In the beginning, the 4 founders created Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. This has been widely regarded as a bad move.
As it has caused nothing but trouble in the wizarding world since.
Let's see. Oh man, there's just so much. Moby Dick, but if it was written by Jane Austen. The scenes between Queequeg and Ishmael would have been a lot more steamy.
Jesus. I don't know. I mean, I listened to it when you were listening to the audiobook. Some of those scenes were a little steamy. Like, you definitely got it.
Yeah, it's
like
pretty...
when they were working with spermaceti and stuff.
Yeah, it's blatant. It's there. That was almost pornographic.
Oh, yeah, I was like, Ramona can hear. Turn that off. What book are you listening to?
What is this? What is this? Oh man. Lord of the Rings by Miguel Cervantes would be very interesting.
See, I've never read anything by Cervantes.
Don Quixote.
I know you've told me about it, but I haven't
read it.
Such
a good book.
So I know basically what you've told me about the author, but outside of that, I really don't.
Or Don Quixote written by J.K. Rowling. That'd be great, actually.
That would be.
That'd be fantastic. The possibilities are endless.
That's what I mean.
Oh my
It's fun to
god.
think about.
Harry Potter written by Harper Lee.
Oh, that would be depressing.
There'd be a lot more racial slurs thrown around in there.
Right?
There would be mudblood on every page.
Lee Jordan would be on trial.
Yeah, he would. Dean Thomas, too. Oh. Oh,
Wait,
man.
oh yeah, there's just so many ideas.
Oh. Oh. I wasn't expecting to laugh so much so quickly into the stream.
Andy Weir writing Harry Potter.
Oh god. I was listening to
Well, it wasn't quite magic.
let me explain how this scientifically works.
Yes.
So
It would be like the perfect book for me.
well, I think somebody that you actually might enjoy listening to is this guy Preston Jacobs. He is a YouTuber who produces Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire content. And I was listening to a podcast last night, and all of his Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire theories are all seen through the lens that there is no such thing as magic and prophecy in a Game of Thrones. And,
yeah, you've told me about this.
And that it's all more sci-fi and science rather than magic and prophecy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
The Maesters were right.
The Maesters were right. Although I don't know how he explains dragons. Because they're very, very clearly a magical creature.
Yeah.
They're the most magical thing that ever magicked.
I mean, I kind of came up with a good biological explanation of how they could live. Although...
Right, but they're still like a magical creature. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like scientifically they could possibly exist. The biggest issue with dragons is to have the flying part. Is like the wingspan and their weights. But then methane is lighter than air. So if my idea that they have like a methane bladder...
Maybe they can inflate it.
So, yeah, pretty much.
Manatees can do that.
Yeah.
And crocodiles can...
They would obviously have to have, like, hollow bone.
Yeah, they'd have to have hollow bones.
But then they have those, like, hard scales. So maybe they have a exoskeleton instead of an internal skeleton. But then that disproves the whole Game of Thrones thing because they have a skull.
Yeah, they have skulls.
Because I remember watching a thing about the Godzilla monsters.
Yeah.
Dinosaur with heartburn, yes. A Godzilla thing about like King Ghidorah and how for King Ghidorah to actually exist, his wings each wing would have to be like 5 kilometers long.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's huge. Yeah. Well, if you think of dragons having a skeleton and hard scales, maybe they can do things kind of like crocodiles do, where crocodiles can physically move their organs around inside of their bodies to change their center of gravity. Maybe dragons can do something like that, where they can expand their methane bladder, make themselves like more buoyant, and maybe they can move their organs to kind of shift stuff around in there.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then they definitely have to have huge wingspans and hollow bones, for sure.
Or maybe the reason they like kind of lay on their hoards and slink away into the caves is because they have to replenish their methane bladders before they can fly again. Without the methane,
they can't fly.
They can't fly. But when they breathe fire, they burn it. So then it becomes harder for them to fly. I don't know. You know where there are no dragons, where we don't have to worry about that? At Hogwarts. Where Lupin is.
There'll be dragons in this story. There should be dragons in this story.
Should there?
Takes us through the Harry Potter series, and there's dragons in Harry Potter.
I keep forgetting that we go through the Harry Potter series. Yeah, we're gonna see Norbert and then...
Maybe. I don't know.
Norberta.
Lupin's not in the first book.
Yeah, but Norberta, or no, he doesn't come back. I was thinking that he was one of the dragons in the fourth book, but no,
No.
that's not the case.
Although I think they
Or she was one of the dragons.
I think they definitely mentioned Norbert again in 7 though.
Do they? It's Norberta, by the way.
Norberta. Was it 7? Fred and George, yeah, I think it's 7. Fred and George mailed Percy Norwegian Ridgeback poop. What if it was Norberta's poop? Are they creating some kind of chemical reaction in their bodies?
Yeah, like my idea was that dragons don't poop. They're kind of fermenting
Their
everything
food.
they eat, and it digests the super strong stomach acid, so it breaks down the bones and everything, and it
Like
just
a crocodile.
yeah, and then all that gas from the fermentation goes to basically a bladder of some sort that they can use to either help them fly or
Ignite.
expel and ignite to create the flamethrower effect that dragons have.
The methane bladder.
And I guess any excess goo that might be left over, they just
excrete,
vomit. Kind of like owls do, like the owl vomit. Because I think you said you didn't do this, but I remember in 6th grade we had to like dig through owl vomit because owls
vomit everything they can't digest.
Yeah. And it was actually kind of cool because you can find like entire skeletons in this owl vomit.
Or dragons are so incredibly efficient that they don't have any waste, that they can digest everything.
That could be too, but
or they could have a cloaca where they pass that waste. You've seen owls do that. That's actually cool.
Oh yeah, that is. I wonder if they have to do that at Hogwarts, go through the owl peak. Wonder if
Filch probably has to clean it up.
Wonder if Hedwig, anytime she was mad at Harry, just kind of did it on his pillow.
I could see her doing that. She is pretty sassy sometimes. Yeah. I bet she's done it before. But I bet Pig does it on accident and makes Ron angry because he steps in it.
Yeah, but probably.
Pig's just a sweet young boy.
He's little too, so it'd be little baby pukes.
Yeah, he wouldn't see it. Are you all right, Lola?
Well, yeah, you were making her jealous when you were petting Boban, and you wouldn't show her love. So
I know, now she's ignoring me now.
But okay. I think we've covered all the bases so far. Maybe we should dive into
all the young dudes.
Story time. See what Lupin has been up to. What happened last time?
They got back to Hogwarts. They went on the train.
Okay, they didn't. Oh yeah, they got back on the train, and the whole Marauders found out about Lupin not taking the same classes.
Yes,
and it's because Lily and the other girls had taken those other classes.
So there might be a hint of jealousy from James and Sirius on that score.
Lupin is hungry like the wolf.
Mm-hmm. Scoping out some Red Riding Hoods.
It's like that cartoon wolf who always whistles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's Lupin right now.
I know Lupin and Lily are BFFs. This is very interesting development.
Or maybe more.
It also kind of makes sense that if James and Lily were to get together and Lily would be so close to the Marauders that she would have been friends with at least one of them.
Yeah.
You know, that they would have developed a bond. All right, here we go. Ooh. Okay. Chapter 42. 3rd year. Fantastic Beasts. Friday, 7th of September, 1973. Head burp, sorry.
Oh, it looked like you were trying to hold in a laugh.
No. By the end of his first week of 3rd year, Remus felt like he needed another 2 months just to recover, and there hadn't even been a full moon yet. He felt foolish for not considering that adding 3 extra subjects to his timetable would also increase his workload, But of course it did, and by the time Friday rolled around, he felt weighed down by the amount of homework to be completed over the weekend. "It's not fair," Peter whined. "This year was supposed to be fun, with Hogsmeade and everything." "We'll still go to Hogsmeade, Peter," James murmured over a complicated-looking star chart. "I'm with Pete," Sirius groaned, screwing up his dream diary for divination. "Let's sack this off and go and use the Quidditch pitch while it's still light." James looked up eagerly. "Yeah, go on then." All three of them stood. "No thanks," Remus said absent-mindedly. He was actually quite enjoying his transfiguration homework, an essay on bodily transformations. He was pretty good at basic modifications now, for covering up scars, and was able to answer the questions at length. "Don't fancy looking over my Muggle studies, do you, Moony?" said Sirius mattily. Remus raised his eyebrows. "If I have time. James, Pete, want me to look at yours?" "Thanks, Remus," Peter grinned, tying up his shoelaces. "Nah," James refused. "Thought I might ask Evans for a bit of help on it later on." Gonna ask Evans for some help with Muggle studies. Ooh. "Losing battle, mate," Sirius counselled. "Dunno why you're so hung up on her." James just shrugged, not looking at all discouraged. Remus spent a satisfying hour or two by himself, completing the rest of his work for the week. He'd made a start on potions, but thought it could bear leaving for a bit longer. Peter could give him a hand in exchange for the Muggle Studies comprehension homework. They had double potions on Mondays now, first thing, but thankfully no longer with the Slytherins. In fact, the only class they shared with Slytherin now was arithmancy, and that wasn't a practical subject, so there was much less space for open house warfare. Arithmancy was a real surprise to Remus. He'd expected to fall behind Sirius and James, at least at first. But it appeared that this subject was down to logic rather than magical ability, and Remus had found his first lesson to be shockingly straightforward. The homework, which he knew Sirius and James had not yet attempted, was to calculate their own heart and character numbers using the Agrippin method. This he found quite soothing, though he knew he would never admit it to anyone. Herbology plodded along at its usual pace. Remus couldn't pretend at all to be interested in it, but at least it wasn't difficult. Astronomy wasn't his strongest subject either, but luckily Peter was generally so thrilled to be the only one who knew something that he gave Remus most of the answers for nothing. Then there was his new favourite subject, care of magical creatures, on Wednesdays and Thursdays. He wasn't going to tell the others about that either. They'd already teased him for liking history so much, and for taking runes. All good-natured, of course. He'd made fun of them for doing divination, which by the sounds of it was pretty dire. He'd read his copy of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them twice over the summer. It had been his favourite bedtime reading. The pictures and descriptions were so vivid they filled his dreams with the most spectacular images. There had been nothing in the set text, Remus was sure to check this, about werewolves. Fortunately, they weren't considered in the same league as magical creatures, and it looked as though they weren't going to be studying half-humans until next year in Defense Against the Dark Arts. "I hope we do unicorns," Marlene sighed, leaning against the wall as they queued outside the classroom for their first visit. "Something really nice like that." Mary raised an eyebrow. "I'd rather do dragons. Something a bit exciting."
Yes.
"I'm just glad we don't have Kettleburn," Marlene replied. This made Remus pay attention. "Don't we? Who've we got then?" "Weren't you paying attention to Dumbledore at the feast?" Marlene looked at him disapprovingly. "Kettleburn's off in Romania or Bulgaria or something, doing work for the ministry. Dunno how useful he is, though. He's not exactly in one piece." "So who've we got?" "Whoever it was at the feast," Marlene shrugged. "But my timetable says Professor L. Ferox." As she said this, the classroom door opened and the fifth years ahead of them filed out, chatting animatedly. The Gryffindor third years went inside, and Remus took a desk by the window next to Marlene. When the teacher emerged from his office, both Marlene and Mary, and actually every other girl in the class, sat up a little straighter. Oh. An OC, who is apparently handsome.
Mm-hmm.
He was a good deal younger than Kettleburn, who'd been a bit grizzled even in his middle age. Remus would have guessed his teacher to be in his early 30s. He still had all his limbs, too, which was a definite plus. His hair was thick and sandy blonde, long enough to reach halfway down his back. He wasn't dressed in robes like most teachers, but practical outdoorsy clothes and heavy brown leather boots. He had a slightly weather-beaten face, which served to give his strong features a kind of rugged appeal. His eyes were bright blue and gleamed as he smiled warmly at the class. Oh my god, this says Liverpudlian accent, and I don't know what that sounds like.
Liverpudlian accent?
Yeah, I don't know what that sounds like.
Yeah, I don't know. Hermione says in book 1 that a lot of wizards have no logic.
Yeah.
I could understand that. I mean,
They
why do
rely-
you need logic when you can just magic it up?
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking the same thing. Maybe this will be Lupin's sexual awakening.
Maybe he sat up a little straighter.
Yeah, definitely noticed his appearance, that's for sure.
Almost as he noticed that serious grin.
That serious black grin. That
Damn grin.
All right, well, I'm going to read it how I'm going to read it, and then after this stream, I'll look up the accent so that I do it right. Katie's like, I can't help you on the chat. I don't know.
I'm picturing like that old safari accent, you know?
It's a Scouse accent. Should I just look it up real quick?
Or, you know the hunter in Jumanji? No, actually, that's a bad example. Oh, you're gonna look it up?
I'm just looking it up. It's been voted the second worst accent in the UK.
Oh, Jesus.
That's... Maybe.
So first thing you need to know about the scam.
I just want to hear it.
Like a background on it. But...
I just want to hear an example so I know what it sounds like. Here we go. I just need a little. I didn't need that.
My name is Matt from Voice Hacker, and I'm a student that goes in order to student which turns into a skills. So when the word goes with go, you have goal like this goal, where it kind of goes of the rut sounds in the RPC.
Oh, you know what it sounds like?
Like that. It's just
Brad Pitt's character in when he's the gypsy. What movie is that?
Cake, something cake.
No, he's a bare knuckle boxer gypsy.
Oh god, Wick.
And they joke about how you can't understand him.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it sounds like, I think, or near enough to that.
We'll give it a try. I'll give it a go.
Right.
Sounds a little Scottish, but I'll give it a go. All right. Good afternoon, he boomed in a gruff Liverpudlian accent. He clapped his large callous hands together. Welcome to your first year of Care of Magical Creatures. I'm Professor Ferox. You've all got the Scamander text, I hope. It just sounds Scottish. Whatever. The class immediately pulled out their copies of Fantastic Beasts along with parchment and quills, then looked up at him attentively. Professor Ferox continued to beam at them all. Excellent, he continued. A cracking read, as I'm sure some of you have already discovered. It gives you a nice, comprehensive guide to identifying and encountering most of the well-known magical creatures, but what it can't give you, and what you'll need to excel in this class, is quick thinking, cool-headedness, and nerves of steel. Some of the girls tittered at this, and Remus felt a flutter of excitement. See, James, he thought ruefully, it's not a girly subject. He wasn't sure about the specifications, though. He had enough nerve, maybe. Had to, after the summer he'd had. But cool-headedness was hardly one of his defining traits. No! Ferox clapped his hands together as if eager to begin. He bent under his desk. Look what I've got for you. He rubbed his palms through rough skin. When he rubbed his palms, the rough skin made a soft shh sound. He obviously didn't spend a lot of time inside, Remus thought to himself. Professor Ferox was clearly a man of action. The teacher was now lifting a large wicker basket, letting it gently down on his desk. He opened it, and a large furry creature walked out. It was the biggest cat Remus had ever seen, with bushy silver fur patterned with dark spots, high pointed ears, and a strange brush tail like a lion. It mewed, rather grumpily, then hopped up to sit on top of the basket so that it was almost eye level with Ferox. It glared imperiously down at the class, flicking its tail back and forth. Professor Ferox stroked a long finger down the animal's back, which it appeared to tolerate, blinking slowly. Can anyone tell me what sort of creature Achilles here is? It's a cat, Mary said bluntly without raising her hand. Ferox laughed cheerily. A common mistake, miss. MacDonald, Mary MacDonald. Miss MacDonald? No, Achilles is not a cat, though they are often interbred. Oh! A Ravenclaw boy at the back of the room raised his hand. Yes, Mr. Stan Brooks, sir. Is it an easel, sir? 5 points to Ravenclaw. Ferox nodded enthusiastically. Achilles is an easel. Yeah, the Beatles. They're from Liverpool. But I can't, think of what they sound like right off the top of my head. I've heard them speak a million times, but whatever.
Just sing it instead. I'm sure you can remember.
Hey, hey, Remus, don't make it bad. Take the full moon and make it better.
There you go. Nailed it.
Remus sighed inwardly. He knew that. He ought to have known it anyway. He could remember reading about the tale. Mentally, he struck quick thinking off the list of Ferox's requirements. Hoping to show the professor he was at least eager to learn, Remus began to take notes as Ferox spoke, still stroking Achilles absent-mindedly. You can always identify an easel by its cat-like appearance, high level of intelligence, speckled fur, and plumed tail, the teacher said, indicating these features lovingly. They are classified by the Ministry of Magic as XXX. Can anyone tell me what that means? Remus's hand shot up this time, but so did Marlene's. Ferox picked her, asking her name as he did so. Marlene McKinnon, she smiled up at him. Sir, XXX classified creatures are not recommended for domestication, but should not prove difficult for a qualified wizard to handle. Excellent! 5 points to Gryffindor. Ferox tipped his head. Remus fumed silently. She'd read that straight from the book. Ferox carried on. We will be focusing on XXX classified creatures for the rest of the year. Now, while it's true that Neasels are not recommended as pets, this is not because they are dangerous. In fact, anyone who tells you they're dangerous has likely found themselves on the wrong side of one and should not be trusted. Can anyone tell me why? Remus's hand flew up again. It was all coming back to him now, but Ferox picked another Ravenclaw this time. Because they can detect suspicious people, Davy Kirk piped up, earning another 5 points from Ravenclaw. Absolutely, Professor Ferox smiled. Neasels are excellent judges of character and will react fiercely to anyone untrustworthy. As such, the Ministry requires Neasel owners to put proper licenses and have undergone certain proficiency tests. But as you can see, he stroked Achilles once more. The silver cat barely moved a muscle except to survey the class. They do make wonderful pets as long as they are shown proper respect and care. Is he yours then, Professor? Mary asked, batting her eyes flirtatiously. He's lovely. He is indeed, Ferox replied. If you're careful and don't crowd him, Achilles will probably let you stroke him. Line up, class. There was a general murmuring and scraping of chairs as everyone got to their feet and formed a queue. Remus made sure he was at the very back, so that maybe the lesson would end before he got to the front. Achilles was sure to hate him. Werewolves were the very definition of untrustworthy. Approach him slowly and don't avoid eye contact. If he tries to go for you, he'll use his claws, so keep alert. There we go. He'll let you stroke him now. Nice and gently. As the class queue shortened, the professor continued talking, giving them encouragement and interesting facts interwoven with his own anecdotes. Remus didn't know what Ferox had done before becoming a teacher, but he'd certainly had some adventures. Travelled everywhere, it sounded like. Finally, Remus was at the front of the queue. He felt frozen to the spot, looking at the yellow-eyed animal nervously. Come on, then. What's your name? Professor Ferox beckoned him forward. Remus didn't move. Remus Lupin. Cats don't tend to like me, he mumbled. Achilles is not a cat, the teacher said, still smiling. Come on, Lupin, up you come. Remus sighed heavily and approached. He didn't want someone as cool as Ferox to think he was a wuss. Achilles watched him walk forward. It did look very intelligent. There was something in its eyes, even though it had a very ugly snubbed nose. He reached his hand out, allowing the Kneazle to sniff at him. Its claws weren't out, but Remus was willing to bet they were very long and very sharp. He'd been scratched by cats before and had never really liked them. We have a problem now.
Yeah, you no longer like Lupin.
Nope. Nope. Very good, Professor Ferox was saying. Now a bit closer and give him a stroke. Go on. Swallowing hard, Remus obeyed, ready to jump back if he had to. But Achilles seemed not to mind that he was a werewolf. Instead, he actually began to purr as Remus rubbed him tentatively around the ear, closing his eyes and looking completely docile. There we are! Professor Ferox cheered, delighted. Excellent judges of character, Kneazles. Now we haven't got long left, so if you all just make a note of the homework. Remus stroked Achilles for a little longer. The creature seemed to be enjoying it so much he felt bad for stopping. That was good, wasn't it? Marlene chattered as they left their first lesson. I hope he always brings in things for us to look at. Not going to be very practical when we get to the 5X creatures, Remus said. Maybe he'll bring Achilles in, though, Marlene replied hopefully. Who cares about his cat? Mary nudged. He's bloody gorgeous. Yeah, Marlene giggled. I wonder if he's single. Remus sighed and then began to lag behind the girls. They were a nightmare when they got on the topic of boys, and it was best to stay out of their way before they started waxing lyrical about James and Sirius. He began to daydream as they meandered in the direction of the great hall for lunch. It had been a better lesson than he expected, and even though Ferox hadn't given him any house points, he'd essentially said that Remus had a trustworthy character. No one had ever said anything like that to him before, and it made him feel unusually pleased with himself, a peaceful feeling when they carried on through lunch into their potions lesson later that day, and was still going strong that night as he drifted off to sleep. He dreamed of lions. Can you make some commercial breaks for me to catch up?
Oh, yes, we could do our best.
Katie, it's Care of Magical Creatures class, and there's a sexy new teacher.
That's basically what it was.
Yeah, it was. Look at his response was just
Liverpool accent
that I cannot do.
that
I
you
need to.
can do.
I need to practice.
Yeah,
I need to listen to John Lennon interviews so I can figure it out.
To meet Achilles, a full-blooded Kneazle.
Who was lovely,
Lovely.
but not as lovely as the teacher.
No.
That's what I mean. I just need to listen to it a few times, and I'll know what I'm listening for. Or maybe I need to watch more Love Island and see if there's a person from Liverpool on the show.
I'm sure there was.
Well, the last season that I watched, everyone was from Newcastle. Like, everyone.
Oh,
Or London. That was like it.
I don't remember.
I know. It's okay.
I just remember I don't even remember which accents it was. I just remember there were a couple people on there whose accent I couldn't understand a word they were saying.
Katie goes, just watch Love Island.
Love Island, there you go.
Well, I did get halfway through the second season, and then I just stopped watching it. But
right now, I think Care of Magical Creatures is like the Love Island for those students.
They're in love with Professor Ferox.
I
He
would-
kind of is like a rough around the edges Lockhart without the arrogance.
Yeah, he's like the good qualities of Lockhart. And
he's
he actually
he's rugged, he's handsome, he's blonde, and he's been everywhere and done everything.
and maybe he has actually been there and
Maybe
done
he's
it. Maybe
actually-
it's not just other people's experiences.
This is true. Maybe he's done those things.
Maybe we're gonna find out that he's like Lockhart's cousin or something like that.
Ah, that'd be funny. Or his uncle.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the little Ravenclaw nods too, with Stan Boot and Kirk Davy or whatever his name
Yeah.
was.
Ravenclaw is a bunch of know-it-alls.
Well, because then you have Terry Boot and Harry's ear,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm assuming Roger Davis's dad is the other one.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. I need to take a quick break though. I have to go get a sweater. I'm chilly.
Oh, okay.
So just give me like 2 seconds. Sorry. I just started getting cold before and I'm gonna
All right. Well, we wanted to make a commercial break. There we go.
There we go.
Sweaters. Do you have yours today?
Sparkles aren't usually
I-
short.
No, I know. I was gonna go with some. I'm just like, I don't really have anything for that.
And this is not Gryffindor pride.
It's Kneasel Pride.
It's Lannister pride.
Okay.
We're going Lannister pride.
Well, we're doing. We're going to Hogwarts. We gotta stick. We're not switching authors here,
we
like
did
we talked about before.
we did before. Also, I'm just going to throw it out there. Lupin doesn't like cats. I have a problem with this. Look, even Lola's upset she's leaving.
I mean, he's a werewolf. I think he has an excuse. It's the whole dog cat thing. And hey, he kind of likes them now. He at least likes Kneasels. Close.
No,
enough.
I'm so mad. I missed the beginning. You call it soccer, and my team made the win early last minute. Oh, well,
Oh, that's awesome.
that's... Football is important.
Yeah.
It is important.
And I'm glad your team won. So,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
awesome. Your team won, so that's definitely...
It was worth missing the beginning.
It definitely was, especially since you can go and rewatch. All cats are nice, okay? In their own way.
After a while, yeah.
All cats are nice.
But Kneasels aren't cats.
I know. I'm just saying, all cats are nice.
So what's the chapter of the next, or what's the chapter of the next title? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What's the title of the next chapter?
Yeah, let's see what's happening next here. The Hogwarts Black Market.
There's a thing. What? Maybe that's how Fred and George handled their
I think
business. in the
I think
early
Remus
days.
is gonna start selling cigarettes, is what it is.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna.
Remus, man. Remus, what are you doing? Let's see how the Marauders feel about that.
His chapter summary is Remus begins his career as a 13-year-old cigarette mogul. This is only going to end badly. Somehow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how, but it is going to end badly somehow.
Dumbledore is gonna catch him smoking in the bathroom.
The Mertz is going to tell on him.
Oh yeah, maybe we'll see Moaning Myrtle. Maybe she'll catch him. We've heard little bits and pieces about the Mertz.
Yeah.
But we haven't gotten to see her, so maybe.
Maybe. Chapter 43. Third year. The Hogwarts Black Market.
And no, Lucas, he hasn't sold any yet. We just learned that he has acquired them and is planning on selling them.
I think
And
last
this will
time
be the first time he actually starts dealing.
he gave James and Sirius chocolate bars. I think.
Yeah.
Wednesday, 12th of September, 1973. Ugh, go back to bed, Lupin! Sirius threw a shoe at him from his bed. Sorry. Remus cringed guiltily as he quickly pulled the curtains shut, throwing the room back into darkness. It was 5 a.m., and he was awake. More awake than he'd ever felt in his life. He crept downstairs, not wanting to disturb anyone else, clutching a shoebox box under one arm. With a brand new book to read, Remus set up camp in the most comfortable armchair in the deserted common room. He often came down early on mornings like this, when his body simply refused to sleep and he had so much energy he thought he could run laps round the castle without breaking a sweat. Remus had actually never tried this. If anything, he tried to push the strange urge away, lock it up, and focus on his mind instead. Still, he struggled to concentrate on his book. He thought about going for a walk, but they really weren't allowed out of bounds until breakfast began at 6. Ugh. He had to try not to think about breakfast or his stomach would start growling. Never mind that he'd had 3 helpings of mashed potato with his beef stew last night. Even Peter had looked impressed. Even if it was time for breakfast, he said he'd be in the common room for an hour from 6:30 onward. This was the ideal time, he'd decided. No one expected you to be up to anything nefarious that early in the morning, and the other Marauders typically didn't get up until 7:30, even on weekdays. Sirius would stay in bed longer if he possibly could. James sometimes got up for an early morning broom practice, but not usually until after 7. Remus looked down at the shoebox in his lap. He could cast a quick misdirection charm if James came down sooner than expected. That wouldn't be too difficult. Mind you, the state of his magic was in at that moment he'd better not do it while the box was in his lap, or he ran the risk of vanishing something more vital. He'd already been to Madame Pomfrey once this term, attempting to grow his hair out in transfiguration.
Oh, God. I wonder if Madame Pomfrey has ever had to do that. So what seems to happen? Well, it's gone.
It's gone. It's gone.
I've lost my wand, Madame Pomfrey. Well, just SEO it. Well, no, actually, that was stupid. He doesn't have his wand, he can't ask you.
Yeah.
But either way.
Yeah, that's
No.
awkward.
You don't understand. I lost my wand.
And my 2 gobstones.
Good morning, Angela.
Oh, yes, good morning, good morning. He needed James and Peter to help him carry his rapidly growing locks to the hospital wing. Sirius had been laughing too hard to be of any use at all. Remus experimented levitating his book, but it shot up to the ceiling, smacking it hard before plummeting it down back down to the floor. He sighed. He could do nothing but sit still and wait, it seemed. He wished he could have the record player on. Sirius had left it in the common room along with his newest albums from Andromeda, Aladdin Sane and Led Zeppelin 4. Sirius had been listening to Black Dog on repeat for weeks now. Oh. Remus opened the shoebox and took a quick inventory, though it was unnecessary. This would be his first sale, if anyone came. He'd spoken to a few 5th years he'd seen smoking the year before and got them interested. They seemed to be under the impression that Muggle fags were somehow more potent, or maybe just more exotic, than wizarding ones. He did nothing to discourage the idea and told them to spread the word. Sirius had once obtained an exhaustive list of all the Hogwarts school rules, suggesting that they attempt to break every one until they reached 7th year. Remus read through it and had found nothing that mentioned tobacco trafficking, not if you took the language very literally anyway. Besides, it wasn't going to be a regular thing. He'd only had the stuff he brought with him. He planned to give it all a bit more thought, to wait until after the full moon, but then he found that their first Hogsmeade weekend was coming up on the 15th, and he decided he needed to get a move on. James and Sirius had already planned the trip out in full without consulting Peter or Remus, who were just happy to trail after them as usual. Honeydukes, obviously, and Zonkos to stock up on dung bombs. Then the Shrieking Shack, because James's dad didn't believe it was haunted, which meant James didn't either, and Sirius wanted to prove them both wrong. Then they were very keen to have Remus try something called butterbeer.
Thank you, Angela.
Oh,
Again.
thank you very, very much. That is so kind. Remus had his own plans. He was going to tell them that a long-lost aunt had died and left him with a very small amount of money. This would hopefully be enough of an explanation to satisfy James, who was certain to ask where Remus had acquired his newfound wealth. Remus felt sure that petty crime, even in the Muggle world, was not something James took lightly. Sirius might shrug it off, having little regard for rules in any setting, but he would probably also try to lend Remus some of his own money, which defeated the whole point. "Lupin, that you?" A six-year had come down the stairs from the boys' dormitory, still looking bleary-eyed, clutching an NEWT textbook. "Yeah." Remus sat up straighter in the armchair, roused from his daydream. "Great. Did you say 5 sickles for a pack of 20? "That's right." Remus opened his box, quickly gesturing the six-year over. They made the swap, and the six-year scurried out of the portrait hole, probably off for a morning fag before the library. The little silver coins rattled heavy in Remus's hand, and he grinned to himself. He was selling everything for twice the market rate, but if people were willing to pay. He made 2 more sales to some 5th years and to a 7th year girl who bought a pack of loose tobacco and asked if he had anything more fun for sale. He was a bit confused by what she meant, and she just repeated that he only had pre-rolled and loosed. She shrugged. "I'll ask Martha Ebhurst in Hufflepuff. She's usually got good stuff." Remus nodded, still not really sure what she meant. Either way, it appeared that he was not the only student in school with an entrepreneurial mind. By 7:15, Remus' shoebox was half empty and his pockets jangling. Deeply satisfied, he packed everything away in the common room, as the common room filled up with students beginning their days. "Watcher, Remu!" James came bounding down the stairs, broom in hand, just as Remus was heading up them. "You're up early." "Yeah, I couldn't sleep," Remus replied evasively. Fortunately, James was eager to get on to the Quidditch pitch and didn't pay any attention to the shoebox or the strange clinking round Remus's robes. "See you for lunch," he called, already halfway across the room. "Yes," Remus nodded, hurrying on his way back up the stairs. In the dorm room, Peter was in the shower and Sirius was still asleep, covers thrown over his head. The only part of him visible was his black hair spilling out onto the white pillow. Remus crept silently over to his bed and deposited his money and goods before collecting together his books for the day. James had obviously yanked back the curtains before leaving, and Remus thought with some annoyance he'd not received the same rebuke from Sirius that he had. There was enough light for him to neatly sort through his homework and carefully stow it in his bag. He'd done all the work that was due for the next few days, unsure how much time Madame Pomfrey would make him stay off lessons. He hoped not too long. He'd asked James to make a note of the homework for their shared classes, but he'd be missing care of magical creatures and runes too. He couldn't very well ask any of the girls to get the right notes for him, not without asking him where he'd be. His stomach rumbled again. He wondered if James was having breakfast right now. Potter often ate food on the go, always rushing off to one place or another. The bathroom door creaked open, and Peter peered round the door, head still wet and cheeks pink from the shower. He waved and mouthed, "Morning, Moony." Remus raised a hand in response. Peter looked at Sirius, who was still a lump in the duvet, anxiously before tiptoeing carefully over to his own bed to fetch his tie. Remus watched with some amusement as Peter attempted to gather his things without making so much as a sound. There was a fine line, Remus thought, between showing respect for your dormmate's sleeping habits and just being a complete and utter wuss. It was mean of him, but Remus was feeling particularly wicked that morning. Blame it on the moon. He pulled his wand slowly from his pocket and waved it very slightly, whispering under his breath. In an instant, Peter's book bag slid off the end of his bed, landing with a heavy thud which reverberated off the bedroom's stone walls, rattling the window panes. Wide-eyed, Peter froze, going pale. He shot a look at Sirius, who was stirring, and practically fled from the room, leaving his tie behind. Remus wheezed with laughter, having to sit down on his own bed, clutching his stomach. When he opened his eyes, still catching his breath, Sirius was wide awake, still lying in bed, propped up on one elbow, staring at Remus as if he was mad. "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" Remus shrugged and nodded, standing up again and returning to his pile of homework. Sirius threw a pillow at him. "Knob!" "What? Pete looks looked like such a prat tiptoeing round you. Couldn't help myself. Not very gallant of you, picking on the weak, Moony. Sirius yawned and stretched. He's fine. Remus waved a dismissive hand. I'll take him his tie. Anyway, someone had to get you up. Come on, it's breakfast. Sirius yawned again. Bring me something up. No. James would, Sirius whined. James isn't here. Peter would. As we've established, Remus sat, hoisting his book bag up on his shoulder. Peter's a coward. Sirius groaned and leaned back. Fine, I'll get up. Wait for me. I'm hungry, Remus complained. I won't take long. Just treat it as penance for waking me up. You threw a shoe at me this morning. Did I hit you? No. Well then. Sirius got out of bed, grabbing his uniform. Serves you right anyway, getting up at stupid o'clock. Couldn't sleep, Remus said. I think it's the moon. Sirius stopped outside the bathroom door. He looked at Remus with something like pity, if Sirius Black even had it in him to feel sorry for anyone but himself. Remus regretted saying anything. He didn't want pity. He rarely brought up the full moon for exactly that reason. Sorry, Lupin, Sirius said. Do you worry about it? No, it's not like that, Remus said hurriedly. I just get restless. Hungry, too, so hurry up. He laughed lightly to show everything was fine. Sirius smirked, disappearing into the bathroom. You ought to be grateful, Moony, he called from inside, turning on the shower. Not many Gryffindors would be able to have a lie-in when they know they're sharing a room with a restless werewolf. Wanker, Remus called back. I just need to sit. You want to answer her question real quick?
Oh, what was our Instagram name? BIBLIOBIBULI_official.
Yep. Thursday, 13th of September, 1973. He woke up upstairs, which was unusual. There were mice in the house. He knew that because he often saw them before he transformed. Perhaps once he turned, he chased them, but he didn't think he ever caught any. 3 of his fingers were broken, but at least his shoulders weren't dislocated. That had happened twice already this year. Before moving, Remus made a series of mental checks from top to toe. What hurt? How much did it hurt? Was he numb anywhere? Did all his limbs move when he wanted them to? No, it seemed all right. A few scratches, none too deep. He'd got off easy. Perhaps the wolf was happy to be back at Hogwarts too. He got up from the floor and limped over to the window. Sometimes his knees got a bit out of joint, but this morning they were only sore. He tried to squint through the gaps in the boards, but it was no good. The house was sealed up tight. Remus, dear! Madame Pomfrey's voice drifted up the stairs. Coming, he croaked back hoarsely. His clothes were downstairs, so he'd ripped an old blanket from the bed with his good hand and wrapped it round himself.
Sort of.
Yoda. Is she doing what I think she's doing?
I don't. Yeah. Here, you go.
She looks like she's trying to use the loo.
You can keep it.
Okay. What have I told you, boys? He can't have visitors on the first day. Madame Pomfrey's scolding interrupted his dreams. Remus blinked, yawning. The hospital was dimly lit, curtains drawn. It must be evening already. His stomach grumbled. He wondered if he'd eaten anything yet, or if the nurse had let him sleep instead. He lost so much time after a transformation. Like his bones, nothing seemed to fit together quite right. It's been almost a day, Peter's voice now. We brought him chocolate. Well, that's very nice of you, dear, Madame Pomfrey's voice softened a little. She wasn't a natural disciplinarian. But Mr. Lupin is asleep? I'd love some chocolate, he called out, hoping they could hear him. His throat felt raw. The curtain whipped back to reveal Peter, James, and Sirius standing there looking triumphant. Hiya, Mooney! James and Sirius chorused, plonking themselves down at the end of the bed, either side of his ankles. Here you go! Peter dropped 3 chocolate frogs into his lap. Cheers! Well, if you're up anyway, Madame Pomfrey sighed, I'll go and fetch you some proper food. Half an hour, boys. That's all. Here's your homework, you big weirdo. James pulled out some parchment from his bag, handing it over. James, you're a lifesaver. Remus put it on his bedside table for later. And here's the rest of it. Sirius handed him some more. I had to wait outside your Care of Magical Creatures class for half of lunch, so you better get top marks on that. You did? Remus stared at Sirius, amazed. Sirius nodded imperiously. I did. Got to say, too, bit jealous. Looks like a really interesting subject, which wish I wasn't stuck doing divination. But what about me? James said, gasping dramatically. I see plenty of you, Sirius retorted, giving him a shove. Such a fickle heart, James sighed, making large eyes at Sirius, so that Peter began to giggle uncontrollably. Sirius shoved James again, and James leapt at him, pulling him into a headlock and tussling Sirius's hair. "Oh, Mooney," Peter said suddenly. "Our Bella Fenchurch gave me this for you." He set down a handful of sickles. "She said you knew what it was for?" Yeah. Cheers, Pete." Remus hurried to try to gather up the coins and hide them under his pillow. I had this chocolate frog card she really wanted. Aglanike of Thessaly." "Oh, I wanted that one." Peter looked hurt. Remus shrugged. "Sorry, mate. Money talks."
Remus, what you doing?
Making that bread.
I know, but he was a
Getting
jerk
that
to
money.
Peter. As much as I don't like Peter, I mean, that was a little cold. Come on.
But he doesn't want anyone to know what he's doing.
Well, I know, but there was no reason for him to knock the book bag off.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That was rude.
Yeah.
That was rude.
He was just trying to be considerate of everyone else. And
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
even if he is a bit of a wuss, he's still just trying to be nice and
Yeah.
respectful.
have some
Seeds,
sympathy for the guy,
maybe some seeds of what happens later.
right? Maybe Lupin is the reason why Wormtail is the way he is.
Right? Maybe he's the reason he betrayed James.
Is Lupin the bad guy?
Voldemort.
Lupin's
Voldemort was not the bad guy the whole time. It
no.
was Lupin. Can we blame the werewolf on his behavior?
But he wasn't the werewolf at this point.
Yeah, but they kind of allude to like his oncoming transformation
Yeah.
being the
This
kind of like a
maybe.
girl with PMS. You know, like a couple of days before
Yeah.
you get cranky and stuff. It's kind of like that, I think.
Oh man.
At least he didn't make his wand disappear.
If I know you wouldn't hit me, refer to it when that time of the month comes. Oh, is the full moon coming?
I've seen girls talk about that, like
Oh,
that
before.
before. Yeah. Katie's like, "Yep, I was thinking
Yeah,
the same
fuck.
thing."
Yeah, I don't know. Just, I mean, the Marauders are gonna figure it out at this point. Are they really gonna believe the chocolate card thing?
Oh, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out. It'll come out.
Wormtail might have bought it for now, but Sirius and James, the cogs are turning. Like,
I think
they wouldn't give you that much money for that chocolate frog card. What else is going on here, Luke?
I think if it continues to happen,
Oh yeah,
then they'll think something's up. A one-off, especially if it's like a really rare chocolate frog, it's kind of like magic cards. You could kind of ask whatever you want for it.
yeah.
I'm sure the value of the chocolate frog cards is on a scale of rarity.
Right. Like that's. I'm interested now. Like, what's the most rare?
Chocolate frog?
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe Godric Gryffindor.
No, because
Maybe
we
it's
got a
Hermione.
chocolate frog
Maybe
for
it's
Ramona,
Hermione.
and we got a Godric Gryffindor card.
Yeah.
I don't know where it
Maybe-
is now, but
Maybe it's Harry. Because now
Oh.
Harry is a chocolate frog card.
yeah, that's true. He is a chocolate frog card. I feel like there's tons of Harry, like there's tons of Dumbledore. Remember in the first book, Ron's like, "Oh, you got Dumbledore? What about 4 of him?" But there's tons of
Yeah,
Harry
true.
Potter cards.
You know, I have heard that the full moon correlates to more crime and
People
more
get
erratic behavior in people.
people get a bit peaky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that too. It's interesting, isn't it?
Not sure of the science behind it, like why that happens.
I know Ed Gein used to put on his lady suit and go dancing in the woods on the full moon. There's a thing. There's a connection
Is that
there.
where the saying comes from to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? Does that have anything to do with him?
Not him, but I'm sure there's a correlation because I'm sure teachers notice it and hospital staff. I think that's where like werewolf mythology comes from because people do
Acted
wacky, crazy
around
stuff
full
at
moon.
full moon.
Probably.
Maybe that's why they say you ever dance with the devil in the full moonlight, like you ever do whack shit on the full moon. Like I wonder. Yeah, I wonder what it is.
It must be.
It's got to be from people going a little loopy.
If there are any scientists or psychologists out there who have studied this, please let us know.
The effects of the moon on human behavior. I mean, I know animals are affected by the cycles of the moon.
Well,
You know, so why wouldn't people too? I don't know. What do you think, Lola?
she wants to know, what is the next chapter?
What is the next chapter? Let us
I
see.
feel like this chapter was a setup chapter. Something
Yeah.
big's gonna happen in the next one, like they're gonna figure it out, or
Something's
Lupin's
gonna
almost gonna get caught doing something.
something.
And look at that. James and Sirius are regretting taking divination. That's right.
Shocker.
Care of magical creatures. Not so girly now, is it?
That's right. Maybe Sirius saw the teacher and was like, "Ooh, maybe I want to take care of magical creatures now
Maybe.
too."
I want to pet Achilles.
You have Doda. What do you need Achilles for?
I'm speaking as Sirius.
Yeah. Maybe he wants to pet something else too.
Oh, jeez. Okay, we're going there.
Marlene and Mary
Anyways.
want to.
Well, yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
What's the chapter?
Chapter's called Hogsmeade.
Ooh, okay. This is the first time they're legally going to Hogsmeade,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes. Chapter 44. 3rd year. Hogsmeade. Saturday, 15th of September, 1973. Pack your cloak, James. Why? You never know, do you? Fine, but I doubt we'll want it. Don't you forget you owe me a galleon on that bet we had. I haven't, James returned patiently. Just relax for a minute, will you? Never, Sirius grinned back. You do realize this is the most excitement I've had in months? I wasn't even allowed to go to Diagon Alley this summer. You had more going on than I did, James replied resentfully. At least you had that betrothal drama. My family's so boring. Shut up, Potter. Your family's amazing and you know it. I definitely had the worst summer. I had a great time in France, Peter piped up, but no one paid him much attention. What about you? What about you, Moony? James asked as they wended their way down the stairs into the common room. A gang of excited third years was waiting, ready for their first trip to the village. They were watched over with a fond sort of nostalgia by the older students. What about me? Remus asked, pushing away flashbacks to the summer, the memory of wriggling through a tiny bathroom window and landing hard on his knees on the tile below. How was your summer? You haven't told us anything. Nothing to tell, Remus said. More boring than both of yours. No magic. I just read. Well, you're coming to mine for Christmas, James said cheerfully. They began to file out of the common room and head toward the front entrance. Same as last year, yeah? Moon's on the 10th of December, so we don't even have to worry about that. Remus gaped. How do you know when it is? He hadn't even looked that far ahead. Told you we were bored over the summer, Sirius elbowed him. We looked it up for the next few years. But why? Remus was torn between feeling very touched and somewhat violated. It wasn't for them to worry about. It was his own private problem, and always had been. It's like Quidditch, James said. Whenever anything was important to him, he compared it to Quidditch. You've got to know your team's weaknesses in order to work their strengths. If you say so, Remus replied glumly, not wanting to talk about it much more. He'd hoped that once they knew about his condition, there'd be no more researching it behind his back. They could all get on with things in the way he preferred, which was to ignore the problem completely. The trouble was, nothing was private when it came to James and Sirius. Your whole life was up for grabs. Remus still wasn't used to this. As hard as he tried to keep up, there were just some things he would never want to share. It was all very well if you were James and had open parents who talked to you and listened to you in return, or Sirius, who was so outgoing and almost entirely shameless. Look who it is, Sirius nudged James, pointing at a dark figure waiting in the archway entrance. Lily pushed past the Marauders and went to meet him. Snape.
Severus Snape.
Why are they even friends? James ran his hands through his hair distractedly. They grew up in the same town, Remus said as they carried on, watching the couple ahead, talking animatedly. One redhead, one black. How do you know? James rounded on him, looking affronted. She told me. You fancy her, then? James asked, clearly struggling to know how to react. Remus rolled his eyes. No, we just chat, he said firmly. And if you fancy her, then you might want to try it. He noticed this sort of talk creeping into their conversations lately. Sometimes he had to double-check he was talking to the Marauders and not Marlene and Mary. He fancies her, she fancies so-and-so, and so on. To make matters worse, Avni Chaudhry, a Gryffindor third year, was now going out with Ravenclaw fourth year Matthew Studd, and no one talked about anything else for days. Everyone seemed to have an opinion on it. It was mind-numbingly boring to Remus, for whom, aside from a few exceptions, girls were still generally incomprehensible. She likes you, though, James said. You did all your revision together last term. Only because you lot couldn't be asked, Remus replied defensively. They were approaching the town now. A clutter of pretty stone buildings sat just below them. And it's not like we were alone. Mary and Marlene were there too. We all need to take notes from Moony, Sirius teased. Birds follow him everywhere. How do you do it, Lupin? Those big brown eyes of yours. James and Peter sniggered, but Remus ignored him, walking a little bit ahead, hands in his pockets, still limping slightly from his last transformation. That was an utterly ridiculous suggestion, especially when it was obvious to anyone with eyes that Sirius was the best-looking boy in the year. It was clearer than ever, now that they were all getting taller, growing from childhood into adolescence. James had a certain amount of swagger. That came with wealth and skill on the Quidditch pitch. But Sirius was always going to be in another league entirely. Remus hadn't decided whether to be jealous about it or not, and tried not to think about it too much. When they finally reached Hogsmeade, Remus could not be more relieved. The village looked like some sort of place Remus had previously thought only existed in child's books. The cobbled streets gleamed in the yellow mid-September sunshine, and the higgledy-piggledy rows of black-beamed Tudor cottages might as well have been made of gingerbread and spun sugar. Honeydukes? James said. Honeydukes, the others responded in unison. Remus had never entered the sweet shop through the front door before, nor had he ever been on the shop floor. It was packed to the rafters with boxes, jars, and bags of every kind of confection imaginable. Great trees of brightly coloured lollipops, as large as pinwheels, slabs of chocolate the size of paving stones, piles and piles of glittering sugar mice. The shop was also packed with Hogwarts students, and the Marauders had to push and squeeze to even get close to the goods. They filled their basket with enough sweets to last them until Christmas, at least, before queuing for the till, manned by a very harassed-looking wizard with white hair. Remus realized this was probably Mr. Honeyduke and wondered whether the shopkeeper knew there was a secret tunnel in his cellar. After that, their next stop was Zonko's, the joke shop, which was just as busy as Honeyduke's and one of the noisiest places Remus had ever seen. Every few seconds, something seemed to explode, pop, or start whistling somewhere in the shop, accompanied by the delighted laughter or horrified shrieks of the students. James and Sirius were clearly old hands at practical joke shopping and made an efficient sweep of the premises, weighing up the benefits and downsides of each contraption like a pair of bankers at the stock exchange. Half an hour later, they were finally leaving, weighed down with bags full of dung bombs, trick wands, exploding inkwells, hiccup sweets, and bars of frog spawn soap. Remus thought they'd perhaps been a little short-sighted doing all their shopping first, because next James and Sirius wanted to visit the Shrieking Shack, which meant climbing up the high street and facing an uphill climb, goods in tow. "So what is this place again?" Remus huffed as he struggled up the hill, his knee and hip still bothering him. "Haunted house," James replied, taking 2 of Remus's heaviest shopping bags from him without a word. "Most haunted place in Britain, Dad says." "It's not haunted," Sirius called from up ahead. "You Potters are just superstitious." "I heard that the ghosts there are really nasty," Peter said anxiously, struggling almost as much as Remus was with the steep incline. "Worse than Peeves." "Are they poltergeists, then?" Remus asked, curious. He'd been planning to do some reading about spiritus apparitions when he got the chance, after learning that it had been his father's main area of study. "Think so," James said. "The locals say they hear screaming coming from the house some nights." "Only for a few years, though," Sirius countered. "Poltergeists just don't move in at a moment's notice. It would have been decades and decades of disturbance and negative energy building up to..." "Oh my God." Lupin stopped still and almost dropped the bags he was still holding. He looked up at the house for the first time, and a cold chill struck the pit of his stomach. "What's up, Moony? Want me to take your other bags?" James was asking. Remus shook his head, speechless. He couldn't tear his eyes away. He'd never seen it from the outside before. They always came through the tunnel. But he knew the shade of the wood. He knew what the boarded windows looked like. "Bloody hell, if it's haunted, I think Mooney's been possessed," Sirius said, sounding like he was only half joking. "Oi, Lupin, you're being weird. Stop it." "That's..." Remus struggled to find the words. He closed his eyes and tried to take a few breaths. "That's the house where they put me." James seemed to understand at once and put a hand on Remus's shoulder in a brotherly sort of way. "Okay, come on. It's time to go," he said. No one said anything as they began to trudge back downhill toward the town. Remus looked at the ground ahead the whole time, concentrating on putting one foot in front of the other and getting as far away from the shack as he could. The Shrieking Shack. Shrieking. He felt sick. James steered them in the direction of a quaint-looking pub. Inside there were lots of tables and comfortable chairs, not a far cry from the Gryffindor common room. They found seats in a quiet corner, and Remus sat, gratefully, his joints very sore now. James went to the bar, and Sirius and Peter sat down quietly on either side of Remus. "So, on the full moon, that's where you go?" Peter asked. Remus nodded, fiddling with a damp beer mat on the table. "It's not haunted, then?" Peter continued. "Nope, just me." "So wait, the shrieking is... me. But why..." "Shut up, Pettigrew," Sirius snarled suddenly. Remus looked at him, taken aback. James returned with 4 bottles of amber liquid and set them down, taking his seat. "Butterbeer," he said brightly, pushing one toward Remus. "Try it, Moony, you'll love it." Remus raised the glass to his lips. He was still feeling a bit queasy, and the concoction in the bottle smelled very syrupy, but he found that sweet things usually helped if he'd had a shock. He took a sip and felt instantly warmed by the delicious liquid. He smiled at James, hoping they wouldn't ask any more questions. They didn't. Instead, they spent a very pleasant afternoon drinking butterbeer and planning how best next to utilize their new practical joke arsenal. Peter had the unusually brilliant idea of casting a remote timer spell on the dong bombs so that they could be triggered at any time from anywhere in the castle. Excellent diversionary tactic, James exclaimed, excited. Think of what we could get away with if Filch was chasing dung bombs on the opposite side of the building. Give us time to work a bit more on the map, too, Remus added. You're not seeing the big picture. Sirius folded his arms, leaning back on his chair. We could set them all to go off at the same time. Imagine! We've probably got enough here to hide one in every classroom. Total chaos! Sirius looked so enraptured when he said this that the other three were completely taken in, nodding furiously. Oh, let's not sit here, Lily. It doesn't look very clean. Her nasty, bitter voice interrupted them. They allow in all sorts, clearly. Sirius snapped forward in his chair, glaring at Snape, who was hovering next to a nearby table. Don't be silly, Sev, it's fine. Lily shook her head, pulling out a seat. All right, Evans. James waved at her compulsively, getting that stupid look on his face. Leave us alone, will you, Potter? Lily tossed her hair. Hi, Remus. He waved. Hi. He waved at her, grinning. He couldn't help enjoying the way she treated the Marauders. She was the only one who didn't fawn over them. Ugh, Sirius said, holding his nose, looking at Snape. What's that smell? Potter, did you trail something in on your shoe? James sniggered. Smells more like a dung bomb's gone off. Disgusting, Sirius smirked. Maybe we should open a window. Snape had gone white with rage. Lily put a hand on his arm. Just ignore them, Sev. They're idiots. But Severus would not let Sirius have the last word. How's the family, Black? He asked, his voice wheedling, insidious. Sirius's mouth formed a hard line. Snape continued. Regulus was telling everyone you had quite an exciting summer. So exciting, in fact, that you're no longer welcome back. You don't know what you're talking about, Snivellus, Sirius spat. Remus knew it was too late now. Sirius had engaged, and there was no going back. Don't I? Snape raised an eyebrow, clearly thrilled at the reaction he'd incited. Had any post from Mummy this year, Black? Heard anything at all from any of your relatives? Sirius had a very odd look on his face. Remus had the impression he was realizing something for the first time and trying not to let Severus see it. James looked concerned, no longer laughing. Ignore him, mate, he said quietly. He's a prick. Ignore him. I'm right then. Severus's thin lips curled into a nasty smile. No wonder you follow Potter around like a lovesick girl, when your own family don't want anything to do with you. When you've been disowned like that, I suppose all that's left is to associate with the dregs of society. He cast his black-eyed gaze over Remus and Peter. Sirius stood up, knocking his chair back. His wand was in his hand. He must have reached for it while Snape was talking. Remus stood too, his aching bones forgotten as he clenched his fists, ready to beat Severus senseless if Sirius gave the word. Sirius, don't! James went to snatch his wand away. They weren't allowed to perform magic in Hogsmeade. Come on, Severus, let's go! Lily had stood up too and was tugging her friend's sleeve. She looked furious with him, which was a small comfort to Remus. No, Sirius said, his voice unnervingly steady and authoritative. We're leaving. Come on, lads. I can't take the stench much longer. They did as ordered, even James, who only threw one longing look back at Lily on their way out. That was really mature, Potter said, scratching his head as they stepped out of the pub into the warm evening light. Sirius snorted, starting back up to Hogwarts. It's not over, he said, fiercely, the others jogging to catch up with his purposeful strides. I'll show him. I'll bloody destroy him. The Marauders were at war.
Ooh, things are gonna get good. Can't perform magic at Hogsmeade. But you can at the castle. So wait until we get back, Mr. Snape.
Mr. Snape.
You're not Professor yet. They could call him Moody. Moody Mooney.
Moody Mooney.
Oh, is it the Moody Mooney week? Is that why you're so grumpy?
You think the staff would have told him where he goes, especially if they know he's eventually going to see it at Hogsmeade. Yeah, that was really awful for Lupin. Seeing the house and realizing that all of this.
The poltergeist.
Yeah, that sucks.
He is the haunting. He is the danger.
Yeah. What year did Sirius tell Snape to go into the tunnel?
I think that was in a later year, wasn't it?
I thought so too, but I'm gonna double check because
I guess it would make sense that it was this year. I mean, Sirius is quite mad at him, and they just found out about the tunnel. Well, no, they don't know how to access the tunnel yet, do they? Lupin hasn't told them, so they couldn't tell Snape where to go.
It says 5th year.
Yeah. It's slowly coming together, but yeah, I don't think they know enough to send him.
Which makes sense because they're animagi by that point.
I don't.
Animagi by
it
that
never
point.
says that they're animagi at that point. It just.
I think.
That
Well,
Snape
but
goes
they do
into
it
the
in 5th
tunnel
year.
and James stops him.
I know, but they're in 5th year, so potentially they might be at that.
Well, yeah, they might be at that point. I'm just saying when they tell the story.
Oh yeah.
They never suggest that they're animagi.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah.
I wonder how that's all gonna play out in this story.
I don't know, because this is like a good setup for it.
Establishing
Sirius
that
is
hate.
quite angry.
Yeah, he really hates him, you know. And Snape just can't help himself.
No, he can't.
He's gotta he can't not just gotta do it.
And Lily's
not feeling that.
No,
She's just
she's
like,
trying,
yeah.
but no, it's not working.
I do kind of think that at this point, it's just very cute how much James really likes her. It's just cute.
Yeah, I think Lily is trying to make Snape
Better.
and the Marauder. Not necessarily that. I think at this point, she's trying to develop a truce between the Marauders and Snape, because she's friends with Snape, but she's also friends with the Marauders. And
Well,
you know,
Lupin anyway.
it's hard to be friends with people when your friends are enemies.
Well, she's not friends with James and Sirius. She's just friends with Lupin. She thinks James and Sirius are annoying.
Well, yeah.
I mean, she gets along with them and okay, but like she's friends with
Snape
Lupin.
obviously doesn't get along with Lupin. And if
No.
Snape is to be getting along with Lupin, he needs to get along with the rest of the Marauders, because I don't think Lupin would be... I don't think it would work.
No.
Marauders
No.
are too close.
Does Lupin not say they master becoming animagi in 5th year during the Shrieking Shack showdown?
I don't know. I know it's 5th year they become animagi. But I would assume that was before that.
I don't
Because
know.
they had to have known how to access the tunnel. And I don't know if Lupin would have told them, or they would have figured it out before they're animagi. Maybe they would have. Maybe not. I don't know. Oh, you're researching it? Oh, so,
It has to be. It has to be after they become animagi, because the Marauders are there and Lupin is like already transforming in the tunnel.
see, no, I thought Lupin was transforming, and I thought Snape was going in, and then I thought James just showed up behind him. I don't know. I'm gonna go with what you say. While you research that, though, I did have another idea. So if you weren't here in the beginning, one of the questions I asked while we were waiting for people to join was, if you could have any book ever written, rewritten by any author, who would it be? So I thought, how messed up would it be to have Harry Potter rewritten by Stephen King? I feel like the Shrieking Shack would be a much bigger part.
The Shrieking Shack would have like its own demon entity and living inside of it or something.
Stephen King would have done a great job writing like Myrtle's story. Girl getting picked on and everything, and then wanders into a dark bathroom, hearing a noise, and then it just ends with the gaze into the golden eyes, and all went black. Sounds like a Stephen King ending. Of course, if Stephen King wrote this, I don't think Snape would have survived the Shrieking Shack ordeal.
I don't know. It doesn't say anything about the Animagi, but because now there's some difficulty with the timeline saying that it happened in their 6th year because it happened when Snape was 16.
That's what I mean. I think Harry Potter could do really well as like a horror story.
It could.
There's a lot in there that could go really bad that doesn't, because it's more of a children's story, obviously. So you have to have Harry Potter and the gang succeed.
Well, I also think too, she kind of, yeah, Snape could be 16 in year 5.
Yeah.
According to the Harry Potter lexicon, there are some timeline issues, which is not surprising with J.K. Rowling. She has issues with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's weird, considering everything else is so structured and spot on.
I think it has to do with when Sirius's birthday is, when Snape's birthday is, but I'm pretty sure Snape could probably be 16, because Snape's birthday is in January. Sirius's birthday is in November.
Yeah.
So
would have had to have happened.
She's not good with maths. And she's admitted it. She's admitted, like, I struggle with it. It's an issue.
She's like the opposite of Lupin.
But either way, 5th or 6th year, they definitely could have been Animagi at the time. But I think what happens is Sirius tells Snape to go in there. James finds out that Sirius said it, and James goes down to head him off.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I didn't think like the Marauders were there with Lupin while he was transforming, and then they say, "Oh, who's that in the tunnel?"
Yeah.
I better go stop him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's it. It's a maybe.
They might have been Animagi at the time.
It's a definitive, possibly.
Possible. It's possible. We did get horror in the Bathilda Bagshot chapter.
Yeah,
that was true. Like full on horror. That was like a little mini horror story.
Yeah, that was a little Stephen King placed in there.
In the middle of
That
Deathly Hallows.
Seems like where Stephen King would go with some of that.
And
I don't remember how it looked in the movie.
Kind of blah.
Yeah, it didn't shock me.
It wasn't horrifying in the movie.
It could have been a lot more, but I guess it was a PG-13 rating, so you couldn't go too far with it. I get it.
I'd love to see a rated R Deathly Hallows.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I mean, at this point, I guess if we were talking about it the other day, if they were thinking about remaking anything, you know.
And they do it on like HBO or something.
It'd be an interesting challenge, though. Do you remake it in a children's setting like it was for a new generation, or do you remake it in a more adult manner for the
Harry Potter generation?
The original fans? Do you have it grow up with them, which would kind of be appropriate as the books grow up with the reader?
I think
which would you prefer? Them to redo the story as it was, but better, or for them to
make it an adult series,
grow it up a bit? Yeah.
I think there's a way to adult it while also having it grow up at the same time. I think you can do both.
Yeah.
Because I think you would need to look at, say, Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets not as just little kids' books, a little thing for little kids, but look at it as classic literature.
Hmm.
Because I think you can still watch the first two movies as an adult and still enjoy them, even though they are meant for children. But I don't think there's a timelessness about them. There's like a classicness about them that translates to both sets of audiences. And I think if you do it that way, you can still grow the stories.
Yeah. I guess I'm just asking you, as a big Harry Potter fan, what you would prefer.
Stick to the source material, for God's sake. That is what I would want.
Okay. So you lean more towards
But-
the side of remaking it, but just cleaning it up a bit and making it.
You have to grow it up. You have to mature it as it goes because the material gets more mature
But I'm
and
just
as you
saying,
handle
do
it.
you
But I'm saying
make them all rated R and make it more adult, or do you
I think you change them as they go.
original? Yeah, original.
Yeah,
That's original. That's what
yeah,
I mean.
I think you change it as you go, and I think the first couple you can let your kids potentially watch,
It's
but
like,
as you get to 4, 5, and 6, like don't let your 7-year-old watch that. It's adult shit. More adult stuff, like that's more mature content. You know what I mean? And then by the time you get to 7, like.
Well, yeah, Matilda Bagshot and Nagini coming out of her, and yeah, that would have really shocked me if I saw that before I read it, for sure.
Or
as Angela says, she's glad she saw it or read it before she saw it.
Yeah, they wanted it to be child friendly. Like the whole scene in the beginning of Goblet of Fire, where Wormtail talks about oh my god, Bertha Jorkins and baby Voldemort and all of that. Like that's creepy. That's another instance where it's creepy, and it could have been way creepier. That whole thing, like book 4 could have been very dark and creepy, and they really lightened that up big time. It's like the first book where things get like dark and creepy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't hard hitting enough. And you make it more child friendly in the sense like Snape is pretty fluffy compared to how he is in the books. Snape is like way nicer in the films than he is in the book. Like he's
Really?
way nastier in the books.
I thought they got Snape kind of accurate. They just kind of cut some parts out.
That's what I mean. They didn't show you really how nasty Snape can be.
Yeah. I don't know.
He's nasty, but like that whole remember when he makes fun of like Hermione's teeth and all that, like the things he said, like he's mean.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I understand when you make a movie, you gotta cut some stuff out. Some things have to go. You can't make a 5-hour movie.
Right, but if you have if you do a TV show.
Well, yeah. But I'm saying I don't think they made the right choices with some of the things they cut out.
Katie also makes a good point with 4. Wormtail doesn't even like scream when he chops his hand off.
Oh yeah, he just takes that. He just,
I know.
That's fine. 'Tis but a flesh wound.
Kind of like the dude who chopped off his fingers in the Stephen King story.
Yeah.
Like he just did it. Like he chopped his hand off. Remember when Luke gets his hand chopped off in Star Wars? He was traumatized. It hurt. He screamed, Like,
Right, and that was with a lightsaber. It like cauterized it and everything. He was good, but
yeah,
Wormtail. I mean, who knows how clean that knife is?
who knows how clean that knife
He's out in a graveyard, just
and in bleeding out big time. I don't know. I felt like
I mean,
they
I
definitely
think it was
focused way
Wormtail.
too much on maintaining as broad of an audience as possible. But say if you had like HBO doing Harry Potter,
Well, yeah,
you could grow the story and really
you could do whatever you want.
like 6 is like so dark.
Yeah.
And the movie is like a romantic comedy.
I'm just, man, if I was Wormtail at that point, you know, you like touch the knife, you just get a little cut, just, you know what, never mind, I'm done.
I can't do this.
Throw
I
the
can't
knife
do
down, walk away.
this. Baby Voldemort just leave her
Sit
there.
in the pot. Wormtail?
Wormtail!
You out there? Hurry up!
He just runs away.
Story over.
Story over. Cedric would still be alive.
Exactly.
Him and Harry could just go get Dumbledore.
Had Wormtail actually been a wimp?
Yeah.
You make him this wimp this whole time, and then he cuts his arm off, and he's just like, it's fine. Didn't like that hand anyways.
Wasn't using that for anything.
So what's the next chapter?
I think we could probably get in one more before we...
Wormtail lends a hand. I'm waiting for a reference in this. Call Wormtail like his right hand man.
Yeah,
or
something like that, yeah. Nagini in the box.
Yeah, something like that.
I'll just start.
Okay.
Chapter 45. 3rd year. Noble and most ancient.
Could this be about?
Oh, also just real quick, someone did make a comment talking about the 7th movie, and they said, you know, we got all these walking montages in 7, and we could have had sassy Phineas Nigellus. But instead, we got walking montages. Just think about that for a minute.
Yeah, Phineas Nigellus would have been great.
We wanted him, and we didn't get him. Instead, we got the weird, not Lord of the Rings thing. With all the walking stuff. Where was Phineas Nigellus?
Maybe if they had added in more songs and a second breakfast, it would have worked.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Cold fire. You've got everything but cold fire. You will be my rest in peace, child. I've moved up to take a place near you. So tired. It's the sky that makes you feel tried. It's a trick to make you see wide. It can all but break your heart. Okay then. Saturday, 15th of September, 1973. Knock, knock. Sirius. Nothing. Knock, knock. Knock. Sirius. Silence. Oh, for the love of... Sirius Orion Black III, I know you're in there! James hammered on the door. Piss off, Potter. James stepped back from the bathroom door and sat on his bed, looking dejected. Sirius hadn't joined them for dinner and had been locked in the bathroom now for 2 hours without making a sound. Leave him alone, Remus said, turning the page of his book. He lay belly down on his bed, pretending he wasn't at all concerned. He'll come out when he's ready. That was something he'd often heard Matron say. At least once a week, one of the St. Edmund's boys, usually a new kid, had a tantrum and locked himself in a room or crawled into some small space so no one could reach him. The response from staff was always the same. And ignore it until he realizes no one cares, until he realizes that nothing he can do will make a difference. It always worked. Remus knew his first hand. It's not like him, James said, obviously disregarding Remus's draconian tactic. I could kill Snape, you know, for saying that stuff. Remus shrugged. Black already hates his family, though. I wonder why he let Snivellus bother him about it. James stared at Remus dumbfounded, as if he'd just said something unimaginably cruel. They're still his family, Moony. They're horrible to him. Doesn't mean he doesn't care what they think, James sighed. Look, Lupin, maybe you'd better go before he comes out. Go and find Pete in the library or something. I'm Sirius's friend too, Remus sat up indignantly. Yeah, of course you are, James waved a hand. But, well, if he's been crying, I think he'd rather no one else saw. I don't care if he's crying. I want to help. This was a bit of a lie. Remus had always felt uncomfortable around crying people. He never knew what to do with himself. But he really did want to help too. Hadn't he always tried to help? More than ever, Remus wanted to come clean about having prompted Narcissa into the unbreakable vow, just to see James's face, but he calmed himself. It wasn't a competition, and even if it wasn't one he would win. "Okay," James said, "but you have to be understanding about it. You can't start a fight." "What are you talking about?" Remus was mortally offended. He never started fights. "You two, you're always bickering, I swear." "We do not bicker," Remus snapped. James just raised his eyebrows, which was infuriating. The dark-haired boy hopped off the bed once more and went back to the bathroom door. "Sirius," he knocked. "Please come out and talk to us." "Get lost, Potter. Leave me alone." James sighed again. Remus, annoyed with James, now just as much as he was annoyed with Sirius, got up too and strode over to the door. Indicating for James to move, he rapped hard on the wood himself. "I said piss up." "Sirius, it's me," Remus said, his voice hard and cold like Matron's. "Look, if you're going to mope around like a big Jessie, then at least let us in so we can start planning our revenge." Silence. Remus tutted. "Fine, sulk, but you're being a selfish git. You know you're not the only one whose family hates you." "Remus!" James exclaimed, scandalized. Remus shrugged. It was worth a try. There was a shuffling noise inside the bathroom. Remus pressed his ear to the door, then reeled back as it opened. Sirius's gloomy face peered out. "Finally," James said, relieved. "Look, come out and—" "Mooney can come in," Sirius said, opening the door just wide enough for Remus to squeeze inside, then slamming it back and fixing the lock. It was dark inside. "Lumos," Remus muttered. His wand point lit up, casting a pale glow over the white room and Sirius's pale face. He had been crying. His eyes were dark and red. Remus looked away quickly, glancing up at the light fittings. The bulbs were smashed. He tutted. "You and your temper, eh?" he said. "Reparo." The lights mended and flickered back on. Remus extinguished his wand light. "Didn't do it on purpose," Sirius sniffed, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. It was a sullen, childish gesture, somehow inappropriate for who Sirius was, even at 13, usually the epitome of grace and poise. "I still smash stuff sometimes when I'm angry. My magic gets out of whack." "Oh, right," Remus nodded, though he'd never heard of that before. "So, revenge?" Sirius asked, sitting down on the toilet lid and looking at Remus expectantly. "Revenge," Remus agreed. "What did you want to do to him?" "Not just him," Sirius glowered. "All of them. Every single Slytherin in the school." Remus nodded enthusiastically. That sounded a bit bonkers, but it was a start. There would be time to talk him down later when he was acting less weird and wasn't in danger of blowing up any more light bulbs. "Yeah, we'll get 'em all, Black. Now, come on, let's go in." "I'm not coming out yet," Sirius said sulkily, crossing his arms. Remus sighed. He sat on the floor, leaning against the door. "Okay, fine. Want to talk about it? Because James is probably the best person." "Did you mean what you just said?" Sirius interrupted him again. "Do you think my family hates me?" "Oh, God, I don't know, do I? I'm not exactly the authority on families." Remus rubbed the back of his head. "I was just trying to get you to open the door, to be honest." He meant it as a joke, but Sirius didn't smile. He looked down at Remus through a curtain of black hair. "You said your family hates you." "Well, I suppose they must," Remus explained. "Otherwise they wouldn't... Well, I wouldn't have been sent to St. Edmund's, would I?" "Doesn't mean they hated you." "No," Remus reflected, "but I don't think they can have liked me very much all the same." "You're not... I mean, it doesn't bother you?" Remus shrugged. "Obviously sometimes, but, you know, no one's entitled to a happy life." Matron had said that many times. For the first time, saying it out loud, Remus wondered if she was entirely right. Blimey, Lupin, you're a right downer, you know that. You let me in. Remus kicked Sirius lightly in the shin with the toe of his trainer. If you want cheering up, I'll go get Potter. Nah, Sirius shrugged, smiling weakly. You're okay. Remus laughed. James didn't want me to come in. He just said we bicker. He what? Sirius shook his head. We do not bicker. That's what I said, Remus assured him. My family, Sirius said suddenly. I don't think they hate me. I think they want to like me, really. But I keep letting everyone down. It's funny most of the time, but... well, it isn't today. Remus didn't know what to say to that, so he kept quiet. He thought about Narcissa, vowing to face death if she could not marry Lucius. He thought about Regulus, who often stared at his older brother across the dining hall, green-eyed with jealousy. Families were messy business. Perhaps he ought to be grateful to Lyle Lupin for ending it all in one fell swoop, so that Remus never had to know whether or not he would have made his father proud, or whether he would have been a disappointment after all. Friday, 5th of October, 1973. I've got it! I've really got it this time! That's nice, Pete, Remus replied blithely, reading his arithmancy homework textbook. We should dye his robes pink. He'd just dye them back, it's too simple. Where would we even get his robes from? Remus turned the page and resumed his reading. Bloody hell, there's something wrong with that bludger, Sirius shouted, standing up. Come on, McKinnon, move your bloomin' arse. Do you mind leaving her arse out of it? Mary snapped from a few rows up. They were watching the Gryffindor Quidditch practice. Well, Sirius, Mary, and Peter were. Remus had just wanted to get on with his reading. Jealous, MacDonald? Sirius replied cheekily. Dye his hair pink, then, Peter persisted, shaking Remus's arm for attention. I've learned colour-changing spells now. I can do it. So can he, Remus said, jerking his arm back and searching for his place on the page. You know, Moony, you could show a bit more interest, Sirius said. In Quidditch or taking down your arch-nemesis? Both. Either. I'm here, aren't I? Remus turned another page. Who's your arch-nemesis? Mary asked, getting up and coming down to sit by Sirius. If I told you, I'd have to kill you, Sirius said dryly. Mary rolled her eyes. Is it Snape? All three boys looked at Mary in surprise. She laughed. Come on, you lot, it's not exactly a secret. You all had it in for each other ever since first year. Plus, Lily is one of my best friends. Don't talk to me about Evans, Sirius groaned. I hear enough as it is. I think she's an idiot going round with that creep, Mary said, rubbing her arms as if the thought of Severus made her skin crawl. You know, he made Marlene cry the other day. Called her dad something really nasty. Makes no sense either, because Lily says he's half-blood, Severus. Anyway, someone needs to teach him a lesson. Ah! Sirius barked. He's half-blood? Brilliant. Yeah, Mary said coolly. So's Remus, and I'm Muggle-born. So what? Remus finally looked up from his textbook to smirk at Sirius, raising an eyebrow at him. Sirius looked down, then back at the Quidditch. Nothing, he muttered. I'm not like that. Good, Mary said primly. I get enough of that shit from the Slytherins. Remus was inclined to agree with Mary, who had more backbone than he did, putting Sirius in his place like that. Insults from the Slytherins had definitely increased this term, though it might have only been noticeable to non-pureblood students. Remus had started to worry about travelling between classes himself, though he rarely had to. He had a few near misses anyway, and had been called a mudblood twice. He didn't tell James or Sirius this. It seemed a bit like whinging. Plus, as far as insults went, he felt like he'd been called much worse than mudblood. He didn't like the idea that it made Marlene cry, though. It was all very well that Remus got picked on by Snape and Mulciber, or even that puny, sadistic little Barty Crouch, but making girls cry was another thing altogether. Remus felt a surge of protectiveness and chivalry toward his friend. He clenched his fists, then unclenched them. The problem was that Snape wasn't the type to attack with hexes and big pranks. He could do both of those things. He was every bit as capable as the Marauders, but Snape relied on words to hurt people, and they were much trickier to counteract. Unless you changed the words. Oh! Remus put his book down suddenly. He grabbed Sirius's arm. Oh! What? Sirius frowned at him. He'd been absorbed in watching the training while Remus's mind had wandered. There'd been another opportunity for Sirius to join the Quidditch team this year, but he'd declined. Maybe because he changed his mind. Maybe because he didn't want to be embarrassed in tryouts again. We change the words, Remus gabbled. We change what he says. What are you on about? Sirius clicked his tongue. Snivelous? Yeah, there are spells where you can stop someone speaking, right? Sirius coloured lightly, looking at Remus. Yeah? Okay, so how much more difficult can it be to, twist their words? We could set a trigger word or a few. Mudblood or blood traitor, a half-breed, dung licker, whatever. And instead, we make him say something really nice or really stupid, whatever we feel like. Mooney, where did you hear all those? James scored a goal and Peter leapt up, clapping wildly. Potter did a few loops on his broom, showing off. Sirius grinned up at his friend. Mary's knee was touching Sirius's, Remus noted. They were sitting really close, actually. So, Remus grabbed Sirius's shoulder again, trying to get him to focus. What do you think? I love it, Sirius said simply. We should make him say something really ridiculous, like, I don't know, snuggle bunnies or something. We'll go to the library after this, yeah? Can I come? Mary asked. Sirius shrugged. If you want, I suppose. It's serious Marauder business, though. Mary giggled. Remus wondered if Sirius found that as annoying as he did. He picked up his book and returned to arithmancy. 20 minutes later, the training session was over and the Marauders were walking toward the castle. Mary and Marlene in tow, Sirius and Remus both babbling excitedly to James about their brilliant plan. It had somehow become their plan in Sirius's mind. You're supposed to be off the pitch by 5 o'clock, someone grunted in front of them. Remus turned to see the Slytherin Quidditch team walking toward them, brooms in hand, kits slung over their shoulders. We're leaving now, Bulstrode, bloody hell, James said, annoyed. The pug-faced Slytherin captain just scowled at him and pushed past, deliberately knocking James with his shoulder as he did so. Oi! Sirius pulled out his wand. James held him back. What's it to you, Black? Bulstrode sneered. If that's still even your name. The Slytherins all laughed, including the smallest, newest member who'd been behind the others. Regulus Black. It took James and Remus to pull Sirius away as the Slytherins snickered and whispered. Remember the plan, Remus whispered. Sirius slackened, then nodded. Promise me we'll get all of them, he growled.
Ooh. That's actually a great prank.
That is a good one, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Like when you change the words in someone's phone, the shortcuts,
Yeah.
the autocorrect.
Yeah,
whatever
right.
It's called. That's great. And I think Lupin is a little bit jealous about how close Mary is to Sirius.
I know.
He's
noticing.
their legs are touching.
And it's annoying that she laughs at everything he says.
Why does she have to come to the library with us? This is our thing.
Right.
Marauders only, no girls allowed.
Mm-hmm. I love the little hints of
jealousy
and how they're like growing up and starting to like people, and I just think it's just so cute that from day one James was in love with Lily.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a very kind of meant to be together, true love kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
It's very cute.
I mean, if that's the case, I guess Sirius and Lupin have that same vibe going on.
Sirius is the Lily.
Yeah. Or is Lupin the lily?
No, Sirius is the lily.
James.
I think Sirius is the lily because he has like no idea, and Lupin's the one having all these feelings all the time about stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, maybe Lily did always have the feelings for him. She just was embarrassed to admit it because he's an idiot.
I liked the little scene of them in the bathroom together. Real emotional bonding.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't want somebody to try and cheer you up and help you feel better. Sometimes
You want them to plan your next move, revenge and destruction of your enemies.
And I think Lupin gives Sirius some perspective. Like, dude, you're not the only one who has a shitty family.
Yeah.
And maybe the person to talk to is not the person who has the perfect life, perfect family life, but the person who has broken family issues like Lupin.
A.k.a. Lupin, the one who likes you.
Yeah.
A lot.
But he doesn't even know it. Yeah. There was something else about this chapter. I don't know. I don't remember. But Regulus Black is on the Quidditch team now.
I know. And Sirius is. I thought Sirius would be on the Quidditch team. I don't know.
He's not, because I think for sure if Sirius had been on the Quidditch team, he would have had a picture of the team in his room. Like Harry would have seen a picture of him on the team in his room.
Maybe, yeah. Fair enough.
Because he has the picture of like him with the Marauders. They have a picture, you know what I mean? Like I think he would have had a picture of himself on the team.
Yeah, him and James.
Plus, it would have been another thing to like stick to his family. Like, look, I'm on the Gryffindor team. Ugh.
I beat Regulus.
Yeah.
Unless Regulus beats him, then the rest of his family should have chose the winning side.
Yeah, I wonder how good of a seeker Regulus is going to be.
I don't know.
It's very
maybe pretty good. Not better than James though.
Well, James isn't a seeker.
Oh, that's right. He's a chaser.
Yeah,
I forget. It's
because they labeled him seeker in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's like I definitely
James was into Quidditch enough for the both of them. He lived and breathed Quidditch.
Yeah. I like to pretend in my head that if James had been alive, he would have gone to every single one of Harry's games and would have been...
Oh, he would have been one of those parents.
He would have been Luna Lovegood enthusiastic about cheering for Harry.
Oh, 100%. It would have been ridiculous. Harry would have been so embarrassed.
Yep.
The second Luna Lovegood showed up with that lion hat, he would have just been like, can you get me one of those?
Only put well, Harry wouldn't have had a scar on his forehead.
No.
Put glasses on it, you know.
Yeah.
I think J.K. Rowling wrote like a little article kind of a thing where in their later years when Ginny plays professional Quidditch, Harry does like stay-at-home dad for a little while.
Yeah.
And shows up to like all her games and like is that guy. Yeah. Like, that's my wife. That's my wife. You know, and they're like, you're Harry Potter. Yeah, but that's my wife. And he just is like so incredibly just proud of her for being a professional Quidditch player. Yeah, James could have potentially been an Amos Diggory type of a dad.
Oh yeah, 100. Oh, that would have been great to see Amos and James like, at the games just clashing.
Oh my god, yeah, that'd have been great. Oh, there's kind of like an air of sadness to that, isn't there?
Yeah.
It is sad. That's so sad. When we read this story, every once in a while, it just like hits me again, like, oh yeah.
It would have been nice for Harry.
It would have been nice for Harry.
He would have had a great life.
Harry would have had a wonderful, wonderful life.
Yeah.
But then the story wouldn't be the story.
No, it wouldn't have been a story at all. No one wants to read a 7-book series about a kid who had a great life.
Well, and
everything went great for him, and he had money, and
I mean, Harry spends the entire series looking for a family,
Yeah.
finding a family. This story is going to end sad. It is.
Well, we've read the reviews, and it's apparently a very emotional roller coaster.
Yes, I read the reviews, and people are not the same after they finish the story. Their lives are changed from this story. I don't know. I just read these sections where we talk about James, and James just seems to have. He's got arrogance and swagger and everything else, but he has a big heart and he means well. And he kind of almost has a little bit of a Harry rescue people complex.
Yeah, he does.
Like, he wants everybody to get along. He wants everybody to feel better. He wants to make sure that everybody's okay. And I don't know.
He seems like he wants attention as much as Harry gets attention and doesn't want it.
Yeah.
But other than that, they're like the same person.
They very much are very similar.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting because
I mean, it makes sense though.
The movies
Snape always says that he's just like his father.
Well, the movies play up the relationship Harry has to his mom. But in the books, it's all about the love magic and how much, and he has her eyes. But as far as like, Harry always wants to know about his dad and who his dad was and what his dad was like. And in some ways, when Snape means it as an insult, you're so much like your dad. Like, he is a lot like his dad, and the relationship between him and his dad is really, I don't want to say more important, but it's really explored in the books. And I feel like the author of this story really knows that.
Yeah.
Because I think she's writing James to be just, he's got this arrogant thing and he is a bit of a toe rag, as Lily would say. But he genuinely is
a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. He's so, like, at the end of 3, he's just so happy to be like, you are your father's son. Then he sees Snape's worst memory and he's like, oh dear Jesus.
Oh God, I'm my father's son.
Snape was right. Oh goodness.
Well, not quite.
Yeah,
He never
did
pants someone in front of school.
But he did use Sectum Sempra on Malfoy.
He did.
He did almost kill Malfoy.
Yeah, but that's only physical pain. Physical pain heals. I mean, emotional embarrassment, that lasts a lifetime.
That's true. Not only
that keeps you up at night.
Not only did he get emotionally embarrassed, but he also lost the love of his life, all in a matter of like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That was rough. That sucked. That was a bummer.
Yeah. The whole, love of his life, that was kind of on him, though.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of why he has no one to blame for that but himself.
Yeah,
that's the whole tragedy of the situation. He's entirely responsible.
Yeah,
for
I know.
that.
We're just talking about like Harry being like his father. I'm just saying, like.
Yeah, there's just, I don't know. There's just a twinge of just kind of almost sadness in some of these.
I mean, honestly, the real tragedy is James was kind of the fallback for Lily, because she was like not very interested.
No,
very
she wasn't.
And then Snape did that, and then all of a sudden they get together.
And Rowling said that if Snape hadn't have done that, there was potential there for love to have grown between the two of them if he had made different choices.
Could have had Harry Snape.
Yes.
That sounds so wrong.
I know. But it also is, choices and decisions, right? We get into that whole like deep thing about that, but
Harry Snape and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Harry Snape and the Chamber of Secrets.
Harry Snape and the Goblet of Fire.
Harry Snape and his dad. Book 6. It would be Harry Snape and his dad. The Half-Blood Prince.
Yeah.
Right. That's Katie's agreeing.
Harry Snape Father's Day or something.
Harry Snape and Father's Day. Katie said she really cared for him, otherwise she wouldn't stick around. And that's
Yeah.
very true. If she didn't really care about him, she wouldn't have put up with him for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So if he had made different choices, there would have been the potential there. But he did not make good choices.
No, he made bad choices.
He made very bad choices. And, you know, it would be interesting to see how that would have ended up, because if Lily and Snape had gotten together, how would James have felt that the love of his life ended up with the dude he hated more than anyone else? It would have been, the tables would have been flipped on the other side.
Yeah, maybe.
Although
But at the same time, James...
I don't think James would act like Snape, but it would have been the same situation, and how he would have handled it. It would have been interesting.
I don't know. Maybe James would have been the potions master and been mean to Harry. Same greasy hair as your father, I see.
Saying, do you
You wash.
I
up
see
as
your father
frequently as
never
your
taught
father.
you how to take a shower, Snape.
I'm just... Harry would have just been like emo Harry. I'm just thinking of Harry, but you know,
Yeah.
the hair.
Katie does make a point. If Snape had been sorted into Gryffindor, maybe things would have been different.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's like Dumbledore tells Snape in Goblet of Fire, sometimes I think we sort too soon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's totally a nod to, if things had been different, who could you have been?
Yeah, exactly.
If he had not been surrounded by such negative influences, he might have...
Here's an idea. Maybe you should just not segregate people. How about that? Just teach the students equally.
Oh, Katie, I think you'll find this interesting. So my boss is at Harry Potter World right now. I'm very jealous. But she took her kids into the shop and she bought them little backpacks with the houses on them, and she asked which house they wanted. You can, I guess they're different colors, and you can pick out the house you want. And they're just these little backpacks, and they both, each one of them picked Ravenclaw, and one of them picked Hufflepuff.
No Gryffindor, no Slytherin.
No Gryffindor, no
Against the
Slytherin.
grain.
Yeah.
Not following trends.
No.
Some Hufflepuff love finally.
Hufflepuff.
That's good.
And Ravenclaw.
I'm not even a Hufflepuff, but I don't like how people treat Hufflepuffs. It's like, come on. Even in the books, they don't get any love. They have Cedric Diggory, and they kill him off in the first book he shows up in.
I know. Well, and Ravenclaw, by the other turn, like, they got Lona Lovegood. Like,
Right? They have representation there.
Lona Lovegood. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
She's awesome. And Cho Chang,
And Cho Chang.
who is an awesome Quidditch player.
Yeah.
I don't hate Cho Chang like everybody else does. I just feel bad for her. And Roger Davis, the man whore of Hogwarts.
Oh, yeah.
Roger Davies.
Davies.
Yeah. Ravenclaw's got like a few. Oh, yeah. Ernie Macmillan, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Hannah Abbott, right? Isn't Hannah Abbott a Hufflepuff too?
Yeah.
Yeah, Hannah Abbott, Ernie Macmillan.
They're not really in it that much. They're more mentioned.
They're in it
handful
here and there.
characters.
They're prefects, I think. And
Yeah.
Justin Finch Fletchley.
Was he a Hufflepuff?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
But, you know.
Okay, so I guess they get... They're not like big characters, though. They're just kind of... They're here and there.
But everyone does crap on the Hufflepuffs.
Yeah, they do. It's rough. Rough being a Hufflepuff.
It really is. I need to watch Puffs. What's Puffs?
I don't know. Is it like a fan show?
Yeah.
Hufflepuffs?
A Hufflepuff is a Hufflepuff fan show? Because that sounds great.
It does.
It is. Gilderoy Lockhart is a Ravenclaw.
Mm-hmm.
And Professor Sprout is a Hufflepuff.
Yeah, she is, isn't
'Cause
she?
she's
Yeah,
head of
yeah,
the
she's
house.
the head of the house. Okay, so I guess Sprout is like the biggest representation of Hufflepuff we
Hufflepuff.
have.
Yeah, where would everybody be without those mandrakes?
Probably be dead.
Froze.
But even...
Froze.
Well, yeah.
It's a play. 7 years Harry was at Hogwarts, but it's all from Hufflepuff's perspective.
Oh, that's great.
That sounds fantastic.
That does sound
I want
great.
to watch that. That sounds great. That sounds absolutely great.
Hufflepuffs are just trying to go about their schooling and
Just mind their own damn business. Just get an education.
there's a troll in the school. One of the teachers turns out to be a two-faced freak.
Voldemort
Yeah.
guy.
Well, I'm glad that's over next year. Oh, there's a giant snake in the school killing people or petrifying them, almost killing people. It's like, okay, well, what's the chance? 3 years in a row.
There's a murderer on the loose. And a werewolf is my teacher. Year 4. Yay! The Hogwarts champion is from our house. Oh my god, Voldemort
dead.
killed him.
I think fifth year was the best year for them, wasn't it?
I mean, Dolores Umbridge.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't a good year for anyone.
So, that wasn't even the Hufflepuffs. It's just no one had a
Yeah,
good time.
no one had a good year that year.
Year 6. I mean, there was probably some romantic issues in Hufflepuff House. I mean, if Gryffindor is any indication, I'm sure the same thing was going on in
I feel like-
Hufflepuff.
I feel like 6th year was like the calm before the storm. They're like, everything's good now, we can relax. And then, no, Voldemort's taken over the school. Okay.
No, it was everything's fine. Everything's gonna be okay. We're all gonna be safe. It's all gonna be good. Dear Jesus, was that Dumbledore coming out of the window? What was that? Dumbledore's dead.
I just picture the Hufflepuffs like, my God, this year has been great. Everything's been going so smoothly. And then Dumbledore just falls down behind them in the window.
In 6, the Hufflepuffs were described as confused in their pajamas during the day.
They were just.
They don't know what's happening. They're down by the kitchens, right? Okay, their common room is down by the kitchens. The Slytherins are down in the dungeons.
Yeah.
I don't know how far away the kitchens are from the dungeons. But you literally have one common room that legit knows all the things, and some of them are planning the things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Hufflepuffs, probably just hanging out with the house elves, doing whatever they're doing.
Snacking.
Yeah. The Gryffindors, dealing with Harry all the time. Just dealing with Harry Potter.
Just worried that someone's gonna break in to try to kill Harry one night. They
They're-
don't want to be in between it.
Just don't want to be a part of it. And then Raven, yeah, they're having-
Ignorance is bliss.
right? And then you've got Ravenclaw. Probably just reading all the time. They're probably pretty ignorant of what's going on too.
They're probably like, I wish I wasn't so smart. I don't want to know what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. They just they know what's happening. They just don't want to.
Curse my intelligence. Hufflepuffs are just like, oh, you want to run down to the kitchens, get something to eat? Well, no, actually, what's going? I don't want to know. I'm gonna go down to the kitchens.
Safe where the house elves are. They're safe. No one breaks into the kitchen.
That's true.
You don't see the Death Eaters storming the kitchen.
No.
Nothing bad happens in the kitchen except maybe Winky gets alcohol poisoning every once in a while.
Right? They just have to deal with drunk neighbors.
Right. And Creature occasionally. They do have to deal with Creature every now and then.
Maybe some maggots. Why is there maggots coming from the kitchen? Creature's just like, it's a present. Don't worry about it.
It's a present. Don't worry about it.
It'll be gone by Christmas.
Ow. Ow. Ugh.
So yeah, Hufflepuffs.
They got it good,
They
apparently.
got it good.
Ignorance is bliss.
We will definitely have to check out the Puffs show though.
They also know that the one time they did get involved, someone died.
Yeah, I guess so.
So they're just like, never again.
Yeah, I'm good. All
The
right.
2 times they got involved, right? Justin Finch Fletchley got petrified in the second one.
Yeah.
After the whole thing happened with Harry. And then Cedric died. They're just like, no more. We can't handle this. It's not good.
So yeah, there probably is some brave Hufflepuffs that wanted to help, but his friend just stopped him. You remember what happened? Just stay here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Send it to us.
Oh,
We'll
definitely.
definitely watch it.
It's like the Starks. When they go south, they don't come back. Hufflepuffs, when they go to help Harry, they don't come back.
Fair enough. Fair enough. On that note, for next time, the next chapter I'm very excited about because I think we are going to see the return of one of my favorite characters. Because the next chapter is called The Slug Club.
Oh, Slughorn.
Slughorn! Gotta love a Slughorn chapter.
Is Lupin gonna get invited to the Slug Club?
Is he gonna get invited to the Slug Club?
Or maybe
just Lily.
Potter. Maybe Lily, yeah. Well, Lily was part of it.
I don't think
Maybe
James was. I think
No, I don't
Lily
think
was
so.
the only one in the Slug Club.
Yeah.
And Regulus.
Was Regulus?
Regulus was in the Slug Club.
Oh,
Because he
okay.
says he would have liked the other brother. He would have liked the set of them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Collection. So
Yeah.
weird.
So he'll get Regulus and he'll get Lily and I think Marlene McKinnon was in the Slug Club too. I think.
Yeah, I think so. It sounds...
I think because I think Slughorn mentions that she died and it was terrible.
Yeah.
I think.
But
either way.
we will
That'll be
experience
next time.
that next time.
Yes.
So right now it is time for us to sign off.
It is. We have to dip out.
Yes, some plans. But thank you all.
Sorry.
Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. And we will be taking a week off because of Thanksgiving.
Yes, we will
So
join you all again after the holidays.
All the other people living in the U.S., happy Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And we'll be back in a couple weeks, so we'll see you then.
Yep. Keep an eye out for the next live stream time.